Dragon Shield sleeves are only $7.99 on flipsidegaming.com right now. And if you use the promo code CGB at checkout, you will save 10% and support the channel at the same time. So remember to use the promo code CGB. Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today we have a special video for you. I'm looking at the Bant Midrange second place finishing list from SCG Indianapolis in the new standard format. But what we're going to do today is do something a little different. We're going to adjust it for best of one. So normally I show you a deck, then I go play it. Today I'm going to show you how I take a deck from best of three that I import, somebody else's creation, in this case Jonathan Hobbs, 19 years old, Marion, Indiana, this being one of his best finishes ever with a true brew, so congrats to him. And we're going to take that straight downloaded net deck, someone else's creation, and we're going to try to tune it for best of one. And I'm going to go over my thought process as I do it. Hopefully that helps you. If you want to skip ahead and totally jump into the gameplay, I am going to try to remember to pin a comment right down there with a timestamp so you can do that. I'm not great at remembering those things. I admit this. So thank you for your patience with me, and let's get to work on the deck. So when I look at a deck and I'm thinking about turning it from a best of three environment to a best of one environment, I want to consider the full 75, because basically the sideboard is an extension of the deck. You play more sideboarded games than you play main deck games. So simply copying a main deck and taking it to ladder is usually not a recipe for amazing success. You'll do okay, but you're probably not as good as you could, because most games involve the sideboard. So the first thing I want to do is move the entire sideboard into the deck. Just pile it in here. Dump it on in, get it all together. Then I like to lay out my deck in a certain way. I wish very badly that Magic Arena would let me maximize the screen and use the deck there instead of doing it in this tiny little space. But this is what I like to do. I like to now sort it out by curve. And when I sort things by curve, some cards like March of the Multitudes are obviously not supposed to be a 3-drop. So I have to make sure that I move them somewhere else. Syncopate, definitely not a 1-drop, usually more of a 3-drop, sometimes a 2-drop. So I like to think of it as a 3-drop for the most part. Move out these cards and this card over here. And then, yeah, March of the Multitudes and Mass Manipulation can go there. When looking at a split card, I look at the mode that I use mostly. For Warrant Warden, that would be the 2 mode. For Depose Deploy, it's usually the 4 mode, although the 2 mode is no joke. And then when I look at my mana base, I like to separate out the number of check lands and the number of shock lands from the basic lands. And maybe that's a me thing, but I like to make sure I'm seeing the whole picture, the lands, because the way that the check lands enter the battlefield tapped without friends is pretty important to me. So I lay it out like this. Now I look for any glaringly, we have too much of one thing or another. Those spikes in the curve are usually easy cuts, but the easy cut for sure is anything that's too narrow. That just screams, this is a sideboard card and sideboard card only. And that is something like Crushing Canopy. This says destroy target creature with flying or destroy target enchantment. Great against Drakes, great against Wilderness Reclamation, but against so many decks it will have no targets at all, such as red, and you can't afford to draw cards with no targets at all very often. So we have to remove the Crushing Canopy. I think that's a pretty straightforward cut. Then we have 2 copies of Sultai, the Voice of Plenty. I'm going to go down to 1 copy. 1 in the main seemed to make sense for me, and being legendary, we never want too many of those. Next up, this is a very interesting deck to work on trimming because of the number of spicy 1-ofs. I'm not exactly sure what Cleansing Nova is for out of the sideboard other than a big surprise. It certainly could be a big surprise in the main deck, but it's not really what I'm looking for. So I'm going to trim the Cleansing Nova since it doesn't interact well with the rest of the deck at all. The other cards I'm probably going to trim. This Mass Manipulation is a very neat card, but you can tell it's only for grindy mid-range games because it's too slow versus red and has no targets versus Nexus. And because these are two best of one decks that represent the polar sides of the spectrum, they're what I'm going to consider the most when looking at cards. Does this do something against red because it's the most popular? Does this do something against Nexus? Not because it's the most popular, but because it is the most polarizing. So the first question of what this does against red, being the most popular deck, is the most important. And this is terrible against red. It's way too slow. So we have to cut that from the deck. Moving right along, we have this interesting package with Angel of Grace, 4 of them in the main, which is pretty exciting. And then a Lyra out of the sideboard. I think that trimming some Angel of Grace makes sense to keep our 5-drops from overwhelming, but I don't want to cut too many of them. And I think I can cut it to Fairy Hero of Dominaria as well, as a legendary card that doesn't exactly gel with the entire deck. Moving on down the line, Spell Pierce. It's a 2 of, and it counters target non-creature spell. We also have 2 negates and 2 Disdainful Strokes. Disdainful Stroke sometimes has no targets at all, like against red. Therefore, I am comfortable trimming away Disdainful Stroke entirely. And with Spell Pierce and Negate as options, I want to keep 1 of each. I want to keep my opponent guessing about my counter spell suite, and I don't want too many of these counter target non-creature spell effects in case we're against a deck that's pure creatures, but those are not nearly as common as decks that rely on spells. And Spell Pierce and Negate do something against red. They do amazing things against Nexus. So with those 2 decks in mind, I want to keep it around. A few other trims necessary. There are times when Baffling End does nothing, but it's about the same amount of times that Seal Away does nothing. So I'm not opposed to keeping the Baffling End around. Warrant Warden also sort of fits in that mold of where does it interact with these cards. And I think that trimming a Seal Away makes sense. I think that having 4 of these early kind of hit a creature spells is fine. I'm not sure where the Blink of an Eye goes, however. And when I look over the deck, I'm still not sure. I can look over this whole deck and not be sure exactly what's there for. Some nice glue, but hopefully for best of one, we don't need that glue. So I'm going to trim the Blink of an Eye. I'm also going to trim one of the, well, this is very good against red. So maybe trimming this is a bit aggressive and not what I want to do. I'm going to hold out for a few more cuts. So another thing I want to look at is the mana base. Frank Karsten, known as the math god of MTG to many, wrote in an article on channelfireball.com this week that he found this mana base too ambitious. That double white and then double green, double blue for Frilled Mystic is too clunky. And in best of one, that will be tested even more so. So I do want to do some work on the mana base. I want to cut the Memorial to Genius. In the games I played where I drew the Memorial, I was very, very sad about it. And I drew it in a lot more opening hands than I think I should. But I was so upset by it, I'm going to cut it and instead add the Harbor. Because this gets another green source in the deck. It makes it a little more likely that we'll be able to play Frilled Mystic. However, the basic Plains does not, which, So now we're running all the Shocklands and all the would you call them, check lands, I think, or buddy lands, some call them. But anyway, like, this mana base is going to be painful sometimes, and it's going to be slow and clunky sometimes. It definitely has issues. Frank Karsten recommended removing the History of Benalia's or the Frilled Mystics. History of Benalia I don't want to remove because they stack, and I can't really trim them. But I can trim on Frilled Mystic. I love the card, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary to the strategy. And at least if we trim them down a bit, we won't always need to be casting them on turn 4. So I think that trimming the Frilled Mystic makes a ton of sense. And I want to keep the Benalias, especially now that Night of Autumn is a part of the deck too. Then looking back down the line, is there anything else worth trimming, or do we trim maybe one more Frilled Mystic? Frilled Mystic is a pretty awesome card in the deck. When you get ahead and you can hit Frilled Mystic, it feels like you're winning. But when you can't cast it on time, when your mana is tough, it's a serious liability. So that's a toughie. It's a very tough one for me. And especially looking around for like one more card to cut, I think I'm going to pick The card that jumps out is Chemister's Insight to me as being a little off the rest of the deck, but it does work with kind of the flash deal that we have going. Maybe 2 Knight of Autumns is more than I need, and maybe this Deputy of Detention is only good in certain matchups for certain things, but the answer to every type of permanent is nice. Alright, moment of truth. And I do think I'm going to trim one more Frilled Mystic. As much as I love it, I think that the pressure it puts on the mana base is a bit much. I'm not happy about that at all. I'd almost rather trim an Insight, but it is easier to cast and it is a good glue card. I'd almost rather trim a March of the Multitudes, which might actually be right, because it's never done a lot for me. I can't remember a game that I played where I was happy to have a March of the Multitudes. So, alright, I'm going back, and I'm cutting that one. And we're going to get a Frilled back in there, as it does feel like a key part of the deck's identity and a big part of the games that I've won. Now that I've emptied out my sideboard, created my best of 1 deck, I'll use my wild cards here. 1 mythic wild card for that Angel of Grace. And we're ready to go. Our hand has double History of Benalia, Settle, and Angel of Grace. It's a good hand, but it's slow. It's on the draw. We don't have a Syncopate or a Baffling End, a Seal Away, anything to hold up and maybe stall a red deck. So this hand is definitely one that could get run over completely. I still think in best of 1 you keep a hand like this and you hope for something a little bit slower, and we'll see what happens. White mana go. All right. So we'll lead off with Temple Garden, tapped of course, and our opponent with a Watery Grave untapped, showing us that they probably have some measure of counter magic going on, and it looks like we're up against Esper Control, which is an interesting matchup. This deck I've seen can have a lot of counterplay with all of the counter magic it runs. Our opponent doesn't have the mana here for Absorb. I do think they have a counter because of that turn 2 shock land, but I'm going to go for the Benalia anyway. We have to get through it, and there you go. Syncopate, and then another land drop missed. Let's try Benalia again. This one resolves, so we can get some knights cooking. And the opponent will mortify the Benalia. So we get 1 knight for our troubles and mortify out of the opponent's hand. Pretty good at fighting Benalia, all things considered. The card is usually such a beast. The flash on Angel of Grace is going to make it a lot better here than Lyra, as we can probably resolve it in a window where the opponent leaves their mana down. But Growth Chamber Guardian, interesting draw. It means we're going to have a lot of threats if we can get it resolved and activated, which I think we can thanks to Angel of Grace. The opponent does nothing, will do nothing. Going for Growth Chamber Guardian there might get it countered, which is not where we want to be. But going for Angel of Grace on end step, if we make our opponent tap their mana to counter it, will allow us to then play a Guardian and adapt it right away. And here's a Thought Erasure. I think I'm just going to say no to this. Our opponent using all their blue and all their black mana. I think it is best to just deny the Thought Erasure. Although it is interesting, like what would they pick? If they pick the Syncopate, this is interesting because they can't stop an Angel of Grace no matter what. So no matter what, I'll have an Angel of Grace. If they pick the Syncopate, I can't defend it, but I can grow a Growth Chamber Guardian. Actually, yeah, I'm letting this resolve. Whatever they pick, we can have a great deal of pressure on the board by the end of this turn. And then we just need to protect it for a few turns or keep it coming. Play around board wipes. Kaya's Wrath isn't on the table right now. The Syncopate is the pick. And the Teferi goes to the graveyard. All right, here comes an Angel. And let's swing in. And it looks like the opponent has some kind of a spell. Okay, they're going to warrant away the Angel of Grace. So take 2 damage. I could play the Growth Chamber Guardian, or I could play the other Angel of Grace. If the opponent had... If they were sitting on a card like Kaya's Wrath, maybe they need a mana to play it. If they're sitting on another counterspell, they now have double blue for it. We could play the Growth Chamber Guardian with the plan being to not adapt it. I don't want to shuffle my Angel away, but it's kind of tricky. Because on one hand, I could just slam this Angel. And then if they sweep, I still have Growth Chamber Guardian. Yeah, I'm going to slam an Angel. Just to make sure that there's a lot of pressure still on the battlefield. I'm going to play around counter magic, not sweepers. Our opponent having a hard time casting Kaya's Wrath. They need to draw a black source. Well, they drew one. Let's see if they have it. Vraska's Contempt main phase. All right. So with the mana up now, I think I will Growth Chamber Guardian and adapt it immediately so it can't be mortified in response. So I have another Growth Chamber Guardian ready to go if the sweeper comes. It's a similar situation to last turn, but I want to keep one Angel back. I want to have an Angel in reserve, and I didn't want to adapt a Growth Chamber Guardian last turn and shuffle away what I knew was a good threat. That is a very unfortunate draw. Not what we're looking for. But now we're going to hit and pass, hit and pass. And then if the opponent sweeps the board, we follow up with an Angel. If they don't sweep the board, then we just keep hitting. And we're kicking it on over. Possibly holding up counter magic, so we're not going for the Angel here. That is a big draw. Here we come. Hit. All right. I'm going to go for other Growth Chamber Guardian. Try to draw counter magic out of the opponent. If they are feeling desperate, they may spend it. And there it is. So now we'll pass. What sort of end step shenanigans do we have? A precognitive perception. Okay. I think we let that resolve with the idea that Frilled Mystic counters the board wipe. The board wipe needs to be countered. They don't have the mana left for a Kaya's Wrath, do they? And they concede. So I guess they can't. So I think I would Frilled. So the question there is, would you Frilled Mystic the Thought Erasure? The opponent knows about the Angel. They're definitely going to take the Frilled Mystic. If they're going to take the Frilled Mystic anyway, I may as well try to play it. And with our opponent's mana not having the mana anymore for a Kaya's Wrath, I guess they could still have the black source in hand. The worst thing that would happen is we Frilled Mystic the Thought Erasure, then they play the land they need, they Kaya's Wrath the board. Then we untap from that spot and probably play a Crab People and adapt it from there. And it's still not a terrible spot, but it would definitely give them a chance to be back in the game. On the other hand, if we let it resolve, they just take the Frilled Mystic, and our only play for the turn is to adapt the Growth Chamber Guardian. And then we have one more Guardian in our hand. I guess that's not worth it. So I would Frilled Mystic that Thought Erasure. This is a very slow hand. If we don't draw another green source, the Frilled Mystics don't work. The Settle and the Seal Away do, though. I think I will try it. I don't think I can mulligan something like this away in best of one. Opponent with a hello. We'll throw it on back. And looks like they're playing aggressive white, which is scary. Drawing Lyra is nice. But we will need another land regardless. Make it a good one. The deck runs 26 land. Definitely knows how mana hungry it is. It is a hungry, hungry deck. And Tithe Taker is a big problem, as it cuts off Seal Away. So I'm going to play this tapped land so that I can play Benalia next turn or hold up Seal Away, but it's pretty frustrating to have a Settle the Wreckage versus a Tithe Taker. So, Legion's Landing. And this is life on the draw in best of one. It's very hard. All right, my turn. Well, I'm going to focus on the Settle the Rescue and the Lyra, not the History of Benalia. I actually don't think it will hold up well. And these versions that play blue do it for Deputy of Detention. So I'm going to play a tap land, and I'm going to seal away the Tithe Taker now, so that the Settle the Wreckage can still occur, and it keeps our opponent from flipping Legion's Landing for a turn. All right, they play a Deputy of Detention. Ugh, feels bad. All right. Well, now we can't settle on time. Right now, this isn't a ton of damage, but does this say spells? Spells. Okay, so we can't even play a Frilled Mystic. Yeah. It's really bad on the... It's really, really, really mean when you're on the draw. It's pretty... Variance unbelievable. Wouldn't be a big deal if we were on the play, but we can't be that lucky. We're not allowed. We're gonna feel this. We are gonna feel this one. All right. What do I block? I don't want to give away my Settle too much, but I do need to block, I think, to save some damage. No. What if I just don't block? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The opponent still has to commit a lot to try to kill me in the future. So I'm going to try a no blocks policy here and hope that next turn I can really get him. Ooh, my own Deputy. That's interesting. So I'm going to pass the turnover. We're going to hope our opponent really wants to charge in here. We also do have Frilled Mystic. Another Tithe Taker would shut down Settle, so we can't allow it. We have to play our Frilled Mystic. That's kind of an absurd draw to have in that spot for our opponent. But we're fighting. We're doing our best. Unbelievable. I mean, that is perfect. You can't script it better. You can't script it better. All right. It's not a good game. It was a complete hosing. It's like the best draw you could have. Good game, my butt. Oh, man. Well, we have a 2-mana interactive spell, so I think I have to keep it. And 4 lands, we got a Knight of Autumn this time. Let's give it a shot. Nice little curve of nonsense. And our opponents so far on black and blue cards they own might still be Esper. You don't see many just black and blue decks these days. Okay, Grixis. Grixis it is. Grixis staring match. Well, do we throw a History of Benalia into that? I think so. Can't play around counters all the time. And this is a deck that needs to be on the battlefield. And how about that? The opponent with no plays. If they have Nicole Bolas, the Baffling End is a pretty easy discard. This is not where you wanted it. Okay. So something tells me the opponent has a Ritual of Soot or some other sweeper. I think I just pass and let them use it and not throw away another Benalia Knight into it. And there's an insight. Gonna need to draw some of that counter magic. Definitely don't have it at this time. Growth Chamber Guardian's a pretty good draw. So the opponent has 2 mana up. If they have a shock or something like that, they can interact with it. But the way that they've played it, I don't think they do. I think I'm going to try the Growth Chamber Guardian train. And I'm going to just adapt right now before the opponent untaps and has access to a card like Bedevil. But I really want to draw my Frilled Mystics and counter spells. We've definitely drawn the wrong half of the deck so far for this particular matchup. Pass it on over. Okay. We could go for Sultai. The opponent didn't have a counter recently, but I think I want to swing in and see what happens. The opponent wants to take 4. Okay. I doubt they want to counter a Knight of Autumn. I doubt they want to counter another Growth Chamber Guardian. But the other Growth Chamber Guardian seems the best to kind of play in this situation. I definitely don't want to spam the board. I want to keep my opponent under some considerable pressure, though. They might still have a search for his Kanta, which would be a good reason to save Knight of Autumn. I think I'll try diversifying the threat base with another History of Benalia. Resolves. Alright, I think I'll pass it from here. If the opponent uses a Ritual Soot on this board, I still get another Knight next turn with another Guardian in the bank. But the opponent's getting plenty of time. Their Chemister's inciting like crazy. We don't have good interaction for Niv basically ever with this deck, so that's a problem. I guess the Deputy of Detention, one of, that we could just rip off the top would be nice. But for the most part, we absolutely fail against Niv Mizzet. Thought Erasure, taking out the Growth Chamber Guardian. Never fun. One of the great tensions is, do you hold the cards in hand to get eliminated by Thought Erasure, or do you play them and get them eliminated by Ritual of Soot? So let's keep up the pressure. The opponent, would you like to remove anything? If not, my plan is Angel of Grace. I think I'll hold... No, Baffling End is great to discard to Disinformation Campaign, and I may need the land. But we still haven't drawn a single counterspell or interactive, like on the stack type card, which is tilting. Tilting to say the least. Chemister's Insight. All right. I'll flash in my Angel while my opponent is tapped low. The idea being that Ritual Soot can sweep up the small creatures, but they would need something else to kill the big creature. And they're not in a spot yet where Eldest Reborn and Ritual Soot can be played at the same time. So they have all the cards in the world, but they need to solve the board. So there's a cry. Are they double crying me? Double cry would be really painful, and it would require that they have their third one. I mean, it's possible, but I think they would have just snapped it off. I wouldn't be thinking this long about that play. It'd be a pretty automatic, if you know what I mean. Moment of Craving. Okay. Anything else? No, nothing else. We finally drew an interactive card. All right. Getting there, Growth Chamber Guardian. Our opponent left mana open. They just used a Cry of the Canarium. I think I'll go for this Knight of Autumn. They might not even counter this, because they know I have Sultai, but they don't know about the Mystic. So here's the +1/+1 counters, and we'll end the turn. Our opponent's down to 6. Can we sneak that last damage through with the help of our Lizard Wizard friend? Vraska's Contempt. If I play this and it gets countered, all right, I gotta let that resolve. Still a 2-turn clock. And there's what we're countering. Unfortunately, I don't get to kill the opponent with this, but they are under amazing pressure. And there's a Spell Pierce. Our opponent has a ton of mana, but every land could be critical here, and yep, let's play Sultai. Just do my manual taps to represent the widest range of cards I can have. The opponent knows about the Baffling End, but not the Spell Pierce. So now they need a chain of removal spells that gets through Spell Pierce, and they have Chemist's Insight here. So now they're definitely more constrained on mana. I think we can get this, and we've got it. Another hand with good mana. You never want 2 Growth Chambers, I'd say, but I guess it's not that bad. Let's try keeping this, because if the opponent kills the first one, you have the second one to start your Growth Chamber chain. Hallowed Fountain versus Hallowed Fountain. Well, Breeding Pool, but you get my drift. Let's go, crab people. Let's get crabby up in here. Dawn of Hope on turn 2. So, do we play Benalia or do we adapt this? I think I like adapting it. Although counter magic against blue-white is always the biggest issue, so just having things on the board seems more important. So I'm going to go with Benalia. It also plays around Seal Away, so that's a thing. And we'll get plenty of pressure on the board early. I need another land, and we got it. So get our Frilled Mystics ready. We also have the awesome combo, Frilled Mystic, Chemist's Insight. We can just jam away here without fear and say go. Our opponent with a Revitalize, that's not worth countering. Let him have it. Let him have it. Ooh, it is Bant. And here's Wilderness Reclamation. Well, we could stop the Wilderness Reclamation, or we could stop the cards that the opponent would use the mana from Wilderness Reclamation to play. I think the right thing here is to stop the Wilderness Reclamation. Our opponent's at 15. This would be 8, 10, 13, and pump. This is game. This is game. Don't forget to do the math, kids. Now we can adapt the Guardian, ultimate the Benalia, and say good night, Wilderness Reclamation deck. I'm glad we played that Benalia instead of adapting the Guardian. Good learning moment there. It's an all Painland mana base on the draw. Hopefully the Night of Autumn can fix it a little. I don't think that you can mulligan these sweet, like, 3 lands and some stuff to do hands. I just don't think that they're good against aggro. And sure enough, our opponent leading with Legion's Landing. The bodyguard's doing some bodyguarding. And I'm going to pay 2 life to Growth Chamber Guardian. And we're going to be feeling this for a while. The Night of Autumn might come in handy. Our opponent is the fidgetiest magician on the land. You can see them just touching everything all the time. How fun. Getting that fidget on. All right, here's a Venerated Loxodon. So, I think what I do here is pay the 2 life again and get my Night of Autumn down and take out the landing. Just never let that happen. Those landings can be lethal. Don't get it twisted. And we're going to try to make an ugly mess of the ground. If we can start growing the Growth Chamber Guardians, that would help a lot. Of course, that plays into Deputy of Detention, but maybe our opponent doesn't play that card. Oh, man. They had to have that card, exactly that card right now. Okay. Well, we don't have good blocks. And if we take all this damage, I don't see how we win. So I think we just lose. We could draw Settle the Wreckage, I guess. But yeah, white aggro, too good. I'll take the high upside play. I'll pay 2 life, and I'll bluff Settle. Just say go. See how the opponent wants to handle the attack. That will at least maybe buy us time to use Chemist's Insight here. Bold. They has no fear. All right. So let's ship away what? The Loxodon's obviously the biggest, but is shipping that away a good move? I think shipping away the token to get it permanently removed is better. And now we have to block here and here. Now, if we draw a land that doesn't hurt us, we can play Angel of Grace, which says, until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. Unfortunately, these things are too big to block with Angel of Grace. But we could eat the Loxodon. It's that one Benelish Marshal. It absolutely wrecked us in this game. So let's take it out. Pride of the Conquerors. Ouch. I guess you get to keep your Loxodon. We go to 1. We draw the Settle. We pass it on back. Let the games continue. Good riddance. And we'll see if the opponent's been back building threats to play to the board. Or if they are possibly flooding out and giving us a chance. Ouch. Okay. The opponent's shown a strong reluctance to attacking with the Marshal. If I play both these creatures, my opponent will attack with both creatures and I lose them both. But if I play... Let's see if the opponent has the guts to attack with the Marshal here, because I think I'm losing this game no matter what. I'm leaving myself dead on board. I'm making a judgment call based on the play pattern my opponent has showed me, that they are not willing to attack with their Marshal. So let's see what they do. Yep, that's fine. That's fine. These white aggro decks on the play, man. It just feels like there's no hope. Everything is death. Death and pain. All right, we're actually on the play. My mind is blown. We'll try some Growth Chamber Guardian shenanigans, and our mana's pretty good, so that's nice. Gruul Guildgate. Looks like we might have the Gates deck. If we draw our counter magic, we're in good shape. I'm always saying either I need to draw counter magic or I need early removal. Maybe we need more of both. More angels. Wow. So I want to get big fast. I hope that the opponent isn't a shock-based strategy. So let's try adapting. Looks like we're in the clear for that. And at least if there's a Gates Ablaze, we're going to get some intense damage in first. It's going to be at least 2 turns from that. Gate go. Shocking. Shocking developments here on Gateland. Yep, let's go again. Now, we could deploy at instant speed and play around a Gates Ablaze to make sure damage keeps getting in there, and I like that a lot better. So that's my plan. I like that better than throwing some Growth Chamber Guardians down and hoping my opponent doesn't have another gate and Gates Ablaze. They have Growth Spiral without the land, so mana issues, and it's a basic land. Here's Circuitous Route. So this will get all the gates they could need, but the pressure is going to be very real. In hindsight, if I had played out my Growth Chamber Guardians, that would be better than the deploy here. It would put the opponent in range of 1 hit from an Angel of Grace killing them. And now Angel of Grace only takes them to 1. We might also see the Angel, but no, it is Gates Ablaze. The Archway Angel or Archway Angel gains a ton of life in these decks. Angel, here you are. Can we do 1 more damage? No, but we can take our opponent down 2-1. And I'm going to hold the other Angel in my hand, and that's my strategy. Slam the other Angel. If the opponent kills this one, we have another. If they play a big flying blocker, we get in the way. There's Gates Ablaze, resolves. What else you got? Hydroid Crassus. All right, that can block. So can we draw something to remove the Crassus? We cannot. Time to make my opponent have a 3rd Gates Ablaze, I think. So here's the Growth Chamber Guardian. We'll adapt it now. Take action. I could play out the other one, and I will. Just have 1 more body. If the opponent's able to play, say, Gatebreaker Ram and a way to kill the Angel of Grace. We gotta get there. All right. Nexus of Fate. Redraw. And game over. All right, on the play with a decent aggro hand. No counter magic or interaction of any kind, which is weird, but I will keep it. And we'll see where this takes us. I'm going to play the second white source, so it's possible I don't have to shock myself to play History of Benalia if I draw a Hinterland Harbor. And a Woodland Stream. So right away, I'm thinking that we're up against... It feels like that's usually Merfolk, but it could well be another Nexus deck. Okay, fishies. The fishies are here. All right, in that case, is it better to play History of Benalia, or is it better to adapt Growth Chamber Guardian? Adapting Growth Chamber Guardian starts getting the beats in right away. Is that how we need to win the game against Merfolk? I'm not exactly sure what kind of positioning I should be taking, other than I know for sure I might want to counter a Tempest Caller, something like that. I'm going to try being aggressive and try to shorten the game instead of lengthen it by throwing crab people at the opponent. And I don't know. I don't know if that's right. Being honest with all of you right now. Played the game a long time. I feel weird in this position. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but we're going for it. Jadelight Ranger. Llanowar Elves. Assassin's Trophy. Ah, well, it's not the deck I expected. It's Sultai midrange with Woodland Stream instead of like Hinterland Harbor or Breeding Pool. How does that change things? Being aggressive seems pretty good. So the opponent going into 4 mana, this is usually like Ravenous Chupacabra territory, but they don't have black mana. Do I want to trade a Growth Chamber Guardian with this Jadelight Ranger? I suppose so. I have another one. I'm going to attack and see where the opponent thinks they are. If they think they're the beatdown, they don't block. If they think they're the control, they block. Okay, they block. So they think they're the control deck. I'm going to play out History of Benalia and get that ticking. It's pretty good against Assassin's Trophy. It's hard to say if these knights will be extremely effective. There's a tapped Watery Grave, so maybe another Jadelight? No? It's been a strange game so far. I do think I'll play the other History of Benalia, wait for this to go off, and then stampede my knights over the Branchwalker. I may even deploy that turn to get all the damage through and try to make the opponent use the Assassin's Trophy on a target they wouldn't normally want to use it on. Vivian Reed, I wish I had a syncopate for you, but I don't.
Let's tear this place apart.
And she has chosen the history. All right, what to do this turn? I feel like getting all the damage through is worth it, as opposed to worrying about whether or not Vivian gets one more creature. Because if I get all the damage through, my opponent's F4. And I can hold up Syncopate, the opponent pluses Vivian, I can counter something and possibly win the game with the Teferi move. So I'm going to depose, tap this creature. Draw another Knight of Autumn. Next, all attack. Hold up Syncopate and say go. If my opponent goes for something expensive, like Finality, we counter it. And we win. If the opponent plays a few creatures, okay, that's pretty annoying because they'll go up to 6, but if I play this and minus it, if I play Teferi and minus it on Branchwalker, I have 6 damage, so it's all good. Syncopate that. The opponent gains 2 life, draws 2 cards, but they're tapped out. They already played their land. There's nothing else they can do.
Come to me.
So where I wish I could like right-click reveal this Teferi and just be like, good game, and they wouldn't have to make any more decisions, but that only saves a few seconds. That's just me being impatient. I can get over it.
If you show them more, you need to slow down.
So there's a bit of tempo out of the Bant deck. And Xaxes. I hope that you enjoyed this look at a best of 1 Bant list. I would, in continuing to evolve the deck, try to look for ways to get more early interaction and more counter magic into the deck. Maybe that 4th Frilled Mystic can get in there. Maybe another Syncopate. I was rarely disappointed with it. And a few of the kind of oddball cards, like Warrant Warden, I felt like that should just be another seal away. And maybe the Depose Deploy should just be a baffling end. Something like that. But still, that's tuning and tweaking the deck. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you enjoyed this look at making a best of 3 deck into a best of 1 deck. And as always, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Mana necklaces have arrived at hauntedflower.com. These necklaces are a great way to show your favorite MTG colors. Remember to use the promo code CGB at checkout to save 10%. That is promo code CGB on hauntedflower.com.